StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, as I told you it was coming, I'm going to talk about how I train staff members. How do I train people once they come into my world and they're going to be working specifically in Work on Your Game Incorporated. So before we get into that, I remind you of two things. First of all, daily motivation and Monday motivation text. Once I start sending that text out again, everybody in my text community, which is free to join, you will be able to get those messages. So all you got to do is text me at my number, 305-384-6894. And when those messages start going out again, you, as a member of the text community, will know about it and you'll be getting them. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That's the place where I do all my coaching. We have a group coaching program, which you can join right now. All you got to do is go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. You can see all the details, all the information, exactly what you get as soon as you join, what you have access to, and all the things you'll be able to get to as soon as you join. All you got to do is go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. There are no hoops to jump through. We made it very, very simple for anyone to jump into Work on Your Game University right now. We made it easier than it was before. It was easy before, made it even easier. Again, just go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link is down below in the description to this episode. And I'm looking on right now while I'm recording this. For those of you watching on video, I'm looking on Instagram. They changed up because I will do a little Instagram story when I'm recording my intros to the show. And Instagram has changed up the options when you're posting on the story. They added a whole bunch of things that were not there before and made it a little bit confusing, but I will figure it out. I have figured it out as of this moment. So now getting into this topic, which is how I train my staff. Again, I told you all that this episode was coming after yesterday's episode where I talked about how I hire staff. So I thought I would share this all in one episode, but there's so much that I need to say on each subject that I need to break it up into separate ones, if you don't mind. Now, I have this bad habit of giving people just a whole lot of game, 10 times more than I'm asking you to invest in order to get it. So as long as y'all don't have a problem with me over-delivering in terms of giving y'all game, then that's what I'm going to do here today. Again, for the 2,916th time, that's the number episode that this show is. We're on episode number 2,916. So if you don't mind me giving you more value than even expected, then we'll keep it going. So as long as y'all don't have a problem with that, we shall proceed. Let's get to it. Point number one. The topic, once again, is how I train staff. Number one, documentation. The most important thing you need in place in order to train your staff. It doesn't matter what you are training them to do. They can be trained to be maintenance men. They can be doing data entry work. It can be somebody working as your personal assistant. It can be what other jobs are there out there? There could be somebody who does window repairs. They fix people's windows in their homes. It could be someone putting tint on car windows, someone installing stereo systems. It could be one of those people who you see billboards up on the signs and on the walls in your city. Somebody who takes down the old billboard and puts a new one up. Whatever it is you are training someone to do, the more documentation you have and the more clear your documentation, the better and easier it will be for you and for them. Number one thing you can do to make sure your staff is starting out on the right foot and that they are doing their job properly is to have every task that you will ask of them to be properly and completely documented. What does this mean when I say documented? Documented means everything is written down in detail how you want it done. Written down in detail, not just saying, but actually written down so somebody can read it. Definition of documentation is material that provides official information or evidence that serves as a record. Official or information or evidence that serves as a record. In other words, you want a written record of everything that you want done, or a recorded record. It can be recorded in some way. So whether you write it down or you record it on video, because there are some tasks that you may want someone to do that they need to see how it's done as well as understand it. So they may not just need to look at it, but they got to see it. So for example, when I worked at McDonald's as a high schooler, the documentation there it would be sometimes words, but also there'd be pictures. the picture that says, okay, if someone orders a cheeseburger, you do this. Then the next, it'd be a little picture. Or you put the little ketchup and the mustard. Then you put the onions and some lettuce. Then you put the piece of cheese, and then you put the burger, and then you wrap it up and put the little sticker on it, and then you slide it into the warmer so the people at the front line who are talking to the customers, they can grab the burger out. So it'd be pictures to show what needed to happen, the as well as the written word that you would have in the written documentation as well. So documentation just means some record that someone can look at and follow, and they know exactly what is to happen and how it's supposed to happen. So this applies not only to work where you are telling someone exactly what to do, but also tasks in which people get to make their own decisions to kind of figure things out as they go. So if you want everything to be done a certain way, then you have to fully document exactly what you want people to do down to the smallest detail so that they're doing it exactly as you want it done. Whereas if you have a different job where they have a little bit of leeway and decision making that they need to do, then you also put that in the documentation and let them know, okay, in this space right here, you make a choice based on this. This is the thing that you would do, and you would use your ingenuity or knowledge or insight or skill or decision making, whatever it's going to be, to take whatever that next step is. So it depends on what kind of job you're hiring people for. So your documentation, as I said, it could be video demonstration, written explanation. Ideally, you have both. And this is a time and detail intensive task. Let me tell you that up front. Any of you who is planning on being a boss, any of you who owns a business, or you plan on having a business, and especially if you plan on having a business that you would eventually like to, at least in some aspects, remove yourself from the business. I have clients of mine who are expanding their businesses, or who have and who are expanding their businesses into franchises, to where they have proven the concept to work in one place, and now they want to multiply themselves and have 2, 3, 4, 5 other locations of people running their business. And of course, they can't be in all 5 places at one time, so they can't do everything on their own. The key to being able to do that and expand the business and multiply the business is everything has to be documented so that everyone else at those other new locations know exactly what needs to happen, how it needs to happen, exactly what to do and what not to do. So when I'm telling you that this is a detail and time intensive task, I'm telling you the trade-off, or the payoff, right? Not the trade-off, but the payoff of it being a detail and time intensive task is that now you have everything documented, which means someone other than you could at some point do the work that you are currently doing because you have everything documented. At least some pieces of the work, not everything in your job, depending on the type of business you have, may be able to be done by someone else. But if you want a franchise, then it has to be that way. Now, if there's something, let's say my business as a professional speaker, that aspect of my business, that's not technically not something that technically it is something that I could pass off to other people, because I can take my frameworks of the things that I talk about and teach it to other people and have them go speak on it. And there are speakers who do that. There are businesses who do that. But at the same time, some of the speeches that I do are based on me being me. It's personality driven, which means I need to actually give the speech. It's not they're getting the framework, they're getting the person, and I happen to have the framework. So it depends on the way your business is set up. But you should think about these things as you're looking to, especially if you're looking to build and expand your business. What do I want the future of this business to look like? So again, time and detail intensive. I'm mentioning that for the third time. But once it's done, you don't have to do it again, as long as you do it right. So in our company, for example, I have over 100 documented processes of things that get done. And some of them may be the process itself. Some of them are little details and intricacies and things that maybe someone might have, they came across something, a unique situation that, let me make sure we document this. So if this comes up again, everybody else knows what to do in that situation. But we have over 100 documented processes, and we have them all saved either in a written document or in a video file. So if someone else comes into our company, a new person, I can just share those documents with them and tell them, all right, watch these in this order so that you know everything needs to happen, everything that needs to happen, and then converse with them to make sure they understood it. Because if any of the documentation is unclear, well, then we have to fix it and make sure it is clear enough that nobody can mess it up. So again, think of the best systems that you see that can be multiplied. Think of a Subway, the restaurant, or McDonald's or Starbucks. The reason that they can have so many locations is not because they hire a bunch of really, really smart people. Usually they don't, because they hire so many people. There's no way all of them can be that smart. It's because they have such a great system that it doesn't matter the intelligence of the person, because the person is governed by the system. And that's why the documentation matters. Documentation is what creates the system, by the way. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how I train staff. Number 2, explain the why behind the what. This is something that not every business needs to do, but this is something that I do all the time in my business. the why behind the what. So I not only tell people who I hire what I want them to do, but I also explain to them why I want them to do it. See, once people have gone over documentation of a job, you still should invest time into explaining to people why they're doing it. Because this helps them understand the mentality behind their actions. And if they're a smart person, and I'm assuming they are because you only hire smart people, right? They may be able to improve on whatever it is that you came up with. So this is why your hiring process matters so much. You want to hire people who are smart, maybe even smarter than you in some aspects. And when you show them what you're doing and tell them why they're doing it, then they might figure, oh, well, you know what? Here's a way that we can actually cut the time in half that it takes us to get done. Or here's a more effective or efficient way to do this. Or here's some tool that I came across that could help us do this job even better. So for example, about a month ago, my assistant came to me with a way that we can improve our process when it came to the professional speaking business. And when I looked at what she shared with me, I said, this actually is a good idea. And I took a look at it and we ended up using her new process because she was looking for a solution. And if you hire smart people, they will find things that you otherwise would not have found yourself. And the thing that she found was something that I had no idea it existed. It wasn't even on my radar, but she came to me one day and said, hey, I found this. Let's take a look at this. I looked at it. I said, this makes sense. And that day we implemented it and we started using it. So this is why you explain the why behind the what. So if you just tell people what to do, then they just become automatons, they become robots. And maybe in some aspects of business, you want robots, but in the aspects in which maybe you want some additional eyes and ears working on your behalf, you got to share the why behind the what so people understand stuff. And when you hire good people, again, they'll be able to make your processes better. So anytime I hire someone and I show them the process that we're doing, I always say to them, this is the process we're currently using, but if and when you come across a way we can make this process better, more effective, more efficient, based on this goal that we're trying to reach, let me know about it and we'll test it out. And if it makes sense, then we'll just adopt your process. Because the goal here is not that everything goes my way, me as the boss. The goal is that we achieve the goal. So the goal is the goal. So what is the outcome? As long as everyone knows the outcome, okay, anything you know that can make this outcome better, let's do it. Tell me about it and let's get to it. So again, this is also a time intensive task. This is an investment into your people, which I've talked about in previous episodes. You have to invest in your people if you want them to get better. And the experience is very much worth it. Again, remember that people stay at jobs because they can see that they are contributing and they are growing, and it's not just because of the money. When people leave jobs, often they will cite the money as the reason that they left the job. And sometimes that is the case. But oftentimes when people leave jobs is because they feel like they are stagnating in that position and they don't want to stagnate. Some people are okay stagnating. So just stay at a job for 30 years because they're okay with the position, they're comfortable with it, and it doesn't rock their boat. But there are other people who want to grow, they want to advance, and if they feel like they're not advancing in their current position, they will start looking around and find another position. They might even take the same amount of money to go somewhere else just because there's more potential for advancement and growth. So this is the investment that you're making into your people to not just tell them what to do, because that's not really growth. That's just following rules. But when you take the time to explain to them the why behind your thought processes and what you have them doing, this is where they have the potential for growth, because now they're learning at the same time that they're earning. So you learn while you earn. And this is the requirement of you actually teaching people. The good thing about the type of business that I'm in, for example, and this is just for me specifically, that I'm in the personal development and personal growth business. So when my people who work for me, let's say my audio folks who are working on the editing of this audio, they are actually listening to every episode while they're doing editing. So they are learning the stuff that I'm talking about while I'm talking about it, because they're editing it. So they got to listen to everything I'm saying. So they get the education as part of the work. My current executive assistant, she doesn't do the audio, but she does tell me she listens to episodes of the show. But also she publishes all my written articles. So when she's publishing the written articles, she is reading them and seeing what I'm saying in the articles at the same time. So because of the nature of my work with the books and the social media posts and this episode, these shows here and the articles and all of that stuff, anybody who's dealing with my material is naturally, some of this stuff should rub off on them because they're dealing with this personal and professional development material in the process. And I often, when I'm talking to my assistant, who I speak to every day, we have conversations about this stuff. She'll tell me, hey, I listened to this episode where you said this, and that was really enlightening or really helpful for me. She even tells me that she shares some of my material with her friends who don't work for me, because some of that stuff is very valuable for her, and she sees that her friends could benefit from it as well. So that growth piece is a important part of retaining people on your team, not just getting them, but retaining them. Because if they feel like they're growing, usually people will stick around. So explain the way behind, again, what you're doing, What's the reason that you're doing it? And again, you're making that person smarter. So if they're working for you for a year, they'll be a lot smarter a year from now than they are today, because they got smarter just by listening to you explain the thought process behind how you do your business and how they're doing their job. And that's personal growth. So I personally have invested so much in people that people have gotten hired away from me for triple the salary that I was paying them, simply because I made them so much better. And it sucks to have to hire and train another person when that happens, but at the same time, I consider it a win. I can still take I guess you can call it a moral victory from that, because I made that person so good that they went and got hired away by somebody else, because I made them into such a good performer that other people wanted them. So I consider that part a win, even though overall I had to replace them, and the time that it took for that was a loss at the same time. But you want to do the same thing, is my point. Point number 3, today's topic, once again, is how I train staff. Number 3, raise your team. You have to raise your team. Same way you would raise a child, any of you who's a parent, you have to raise your team. When you hire a new person, do not have the expectation that they're going to step in and immediately be good. Sometimes they will be, but it's still your responsibility to make sure that they are getting better, and you have to invest in them. Same way that, again, when you have a child, first few years of that child's life, you got to watch them like damn near 24 hours a day. Like, you can't take your eyes off them. You got to watch. Somebody got to be watching them. So you can't just leave them to their own. You got to train them from the beginning. I remember when I was, my sister was on my show, man, it's probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe. I believe it was episode 717, something in that range. And when she first got out of college, the first job that she did, she was working in investment banking. And I asked her, because she had a degree from an Ivy League university, and I asked her, was the degree a requirement for getting the job? And I believe that it was. And then I asked her, well, since you had the degree, did the job expect that you had certain skill sets because of the degree? And she said, no, they trained us as if we knew absolutely nothing, even though you had to have the degree to get the job. So that says a lot about the educational system in America, first of all, as a side note. But the point that I'm trying to make here, the reason I'm bringing that up, is because that company, I believe it was UBS, she was working for, the bank. And the point I'm bringing it up is because that company still did not assume that you knew anything, even though you had a very impressive resume. Whoever comes and works there, I'm assuming she wasn't the only person who started the job at the same time. They don't assume you know anything just because you have a degree. They teach you as if you know nothing. So even though you, as a hiring person, when you hire someone, usually you're hiring the best candidate that came through, right? And they usually have a nice, impressive background and resume or something about them that made you say they'll be good, right? But that still doesn't mean you should assume that they know anything. You should teach them as if they didn't know anything. And if they prove that they already know something that you're teaching, then maybe you can pass over that, but you should not assume anything. Assume absolutely nothing. So do not have the expectation that someone will just step in knowing stuff. And whenever I made that mistake, I ended up paying for it by having to replace that person, fire them, because I got frustrated because I had the wrong expectation. Again, it was never their fault. It was always my fault because I had the wrong expectation. So I'm telling you this so that you don't make these same mistakes. Some lines of work, some people do step in and they're good. But often there are growing pains because people have to learn the specific job that they're working at. They got to learn you, they got to learn the processes, and people need to be able to make mistakes, get coached on what they did right and what they can correct. You must have the patience to understand that this is a time and energy investment into your people and allow them time to grow and get acclimated to the job that you have given them. Now, if you do a good job of hiring and you do a good job of documenting, then this person will eventually get better. They will become more proficient and they will grow in the job. But you shouldn't expect it to happen just because they walked in the door the first day. So if you happen to have someone who's great on the first day, consider yourself lucky. Do not expect that to be the norm every time. Again, with the caveat that this depends on the type of job you're hiring for, who you're hiring, where you're hiring from. There are some certain types of jobs when you do expect someone to come in with some actual skill. For example, you hire I don't know, let's say you hire someone to be a surgeon at a hospital. I think when you hire them, you expect them to be able to know how to cut somebody's stomach open. I'm assuming. I don't know anything about that space, but you get what I'm saying. You hire a pilot, I think you expect them to know how to fly a plane. All right, and you think they did some hours in a simulator. I want you all to understand the general point of what I'm making here is that in many jobs, you do need to do some training to make sure people understand the gig. Do not expect them to know anything. Again, the fewer assumptions you make, the less disappointed you'll be. Let's just call it that. Let's put that point on to put a bow on this, and let's recap today's class, which is how I train my staff. And again, I'm sharing this. I wasn't going to put it all in one episode, but as you can see, this is 2 episodes worth of material between hiring and training. And now that I have this on the record, now anybody asks me about this, I can just send you this. Number 1, documentation, documentation, documentation. This can be through video or it can be through written material. The more you have documented, the more you can save yourself time when it comes to teaching any new staff members exactly what you want them to know. The more detailed your documentation, the easier your training process will be because the documentation will do the work for you. Number 2, explain the way, or the why rather, behind the what. What exactly do you want people to do, and then why do you want them to do it? When they understand why you're doing it, then if they're smart, they may be able to find better and simpler and more effective or more efficient or more productive ways to do the job. But if you don't tell them the why, then they don't even know what they should be looking for. And again, if you hire smart people, you want them to know the why, because if they're smart, they'll probably see stuff that you don't see, not because they're smarter than you necessarily, even though it would be great if they are, but because a smart person is usually going to figure some things out that, because they're paying attention over here and you're paying attention over there, they see stuff that you can't see. You can't see everything at the same time. Human beings, limitation is only one focus at a time. Number 3, raise your team. Same way you would raise a child. The first few years of a child's life, you can't take your eyes off them. You got to watch everything that they do. But that's the investment that you make in having a fully functioning, responsible adult later on in life. Same thing with your team. Do not assume that just because you hired them that they're going to just be able to do everything. You just throw them at a desk and say good luck. Now, maybe again, in some jobs, you can have more expectation of skill, of showing up with skill, than other jobs. But I would say, as a general rule, the fewer assumptions you make, the happier you'll be in terms of your expectations. That said, make sure you text me, so you're in my community. Numbers down below in the description. Also, workonyourgameuniversity.com. If you want to join our group mastermind program, you can get in right now. Just go to that link, workonyourgameuniversity.com. You can see all the details, everything we're doing, how to get started, and get yourself started right now, so you can get access to our courses, programs, you get access to our live coaching calls, get into our group communication chat. Right now, I'm looking in WhatsApp. That's where we do this group communication. It is right now 91 unread messages in there. So there's a lot of communication happening there that I have not even looked at, and I might get to later today or later this week. But I got moderators in there who are handling that conversation. And again, get direct coaching from me. That's the fastest way to get started. Again, workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all